Welcome back to the show, everyone. On this week's episode, we have Paul Halme, CFO at Combat Business Success. Paul, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you. Glad to be here.
Of course, Paul. Let's start with telling us about what you do. I was looking at your website. You're an MMA fighter and you do financial consulting, and we can go multiple ways with this conversation. I'm really excited to hear both of it.
I have a lot of different directions I can go into. So my story is kind of crazy. I grew up in the Midwest in South Dakota, and my best friend moved to Texas when I was graduating, and he's like, "Hey, I'm going to go do jiu-jitsu and be in the UFC." And I was like, "Oh, that's cool," because we just started watching it on TV. And so he moved to Texas, and I was like, "Oh, I'll move down there too and check it out for a year." And then ended up getting a job as a stockbroker, which was crazy because I never really did anything. But this is in 2000 when the markets were on fire and they were hiring anybody with a degree. So I went in, passed my interview, got hired. So I spent 6 years as a broker while I was doing jiu-jitsu. And then my best friend got real famous and he won the Ultimate Fighter 4. And then he fought Anderson Silva. So I got to go travel a bunch with that for a few years. And then I was like, the entrepreneurial calling just kind of kept in my ear, like, "Hey, you should open a gym. You should open a gym." And then finally I did it and got really good at doing that. And then people just kept asking me for help. Like, "How do I do this? How do I do that?" And then another friend and I started a consulting company of like, man, if people are going to ask for help, let's just have a consulting company and do it the right way. Because everybody knows you give people free advice. Like, "Oh, let me pick your brain." You give them free advice. They don't do anything with it. They're just like, "Oh, cool. Thanks for, wasting a couple hours of my time. You did nothing." But if they pay you, they tend to do what you tell them to do.
So you're saying that just because people pay you, they actually they have a little bit more skin in the game, so they take your advice and actually do it, so it's worth everyone's time.
Yeah, 100%. I'm the same way. Like, I'll get different courses for free. I won't even open them. But if I bought one, I'm like, "Oh man, I paid for this. I got to go through this course." Now, if it's just human nature or what, but we're designed to not do the work, I think, sometimes.
Of course, I think we take everything for granted. It's like similar to going to the gym, and you as a gym owner, you know that, right? People pay for memberships, so they're slightly more incentivized, but I mean, the gym membership or the model for gyms is knowing that a lot of people actually won't really show up.
Yeah, unfortunately it is. It's sad.
So tell me about owning a gym. How did you get into that? And let's talk about the finance aspect of running a gym.
Yeah, it was crazy. It was, I was still a broker, and I knew I had 2 years when I left the company to my license to expire. So I had a little bit of a cushion where I'm like, okay, I couldn't try this. My wife was real supportive. She's like, "Let's just try it and see what happens." And I did it for a while. Then I was like, man, I can't do both. I got to make a decision. So that little 2-year buffer was good. So moving into the gym was crazy. Like I did a lot of things the wrong way. When I talk to people now, I'm like, don't do it the way I did it. Like, I just started cold turkey. I went and rented a space, had no students, and all I did was go into debt for the first year because I really didn't understand even though I was a broker and good at investing, I didn't understand the cash flow side of business, which that's huge for entrepreneurs. You have to really balance your cash flow. And I didn't have any. My cash flow was like how much overtime I could work at my corporate job. So when that was gone, I was like, oh God. So that's what I tell people when I help them with consulting is like, man, you have to have the most basic understanding of your finances and your cash flow. Because if you don't, it's going to be so painful. Because being an entrepreneur is hard. Like, especially the last 2 years, it was almost impossible. Like, they took away a lot of things from us and made it where we couldn't do things. So if you didn't have cash flow and reserves and lines of credit, it was a scary time. So I teach people is like, understand cash flow, have lines of credit. Because I forget who said the saying is like, whenever you need money, no one's going to give you money. When you don't need money, they'll give you all the money you want. So it's like, get all the money lined up now. So if something does go wrong, you already have it. So that was a huge, huge saver for me and for my clients when all the stuff happened in 2020.
Got it. So you're basically using your corporate job to funnel into your gym. And then at what point, or are you still working your corporate job?
No, that was years ago. No, I did that for 2 years. I left my corporate job in 2007. So it's been a bit.
Got it. So then going into the recession in 2008, did that impact that?
Yeah, great timing. Yeah. Oh, horrible. Yeah. I was like, I really picked a bad time. It's like I became a stockbroker in 2000, then 9/11 happened and that, crushed the markets. And then I became an entrepreneur and then the recession of 2008 hit and that was tough. But you learn how to balance things out, learn how to run a good business because the one thing we learned from the recession that was cool is people still need an outlet. It's like they need something. So like jiu-jitsu MMA gives people an outlet of like they can go work out, have community, things like that, things they don't have anymore. So we actually was pretty recession proof. The pandemic, obviously we weren't because, it was like, hey, you can't be in a non-essential business and you can't touch other humans. I'm like, well, that's 99% of what my business does is you're wrestling other humans or punching other pads. You're super close. So it was a scary time, so having strong fundamentals and understanding cash flow and being able to make decisions under pressure was huge.
That's great. So what did you learn going through that recessionary period, how did you combat it? Because you left your corporate job and you said you're using that to funnel into your business, but then the recession hit. So how did you get through that period?
Man, it was crazy. We were pretty lucky in Texas. It was bad, but it wasn't like horrible. And people still were spending money. So I learned during the recession how to market. Like you had to market because I had to get out there and people know there was something to do, things like an alternative, for stress, things like that. So it was tough. It was a tough time, but you learn like, okay, now we're going to grind it out and we're going to put in some work, and then 2009 comes and everything starts picking back up, and we were in the front because a lot of my competitors and everybody stopped advertising, stopped marketing, or we just stayed in front of everybody. So I was like, oh yeah, that gym's still here. And people came over. And so it was a good reminder. You got to keep doing things that, even if you don't want to do it, you got to keep doing it and get better at marketing and everything.
Yeah. Did you have clearly you had a strong why that you're doing this, but what was that why on how you kept going instead of saying, hey, I'm just going to quit this, go get another job and just try again later?
Man, my why was I just loved it. I loved the people. I loved helping people and seeing people get, changing their lives and being, it's just so different because you can go to a gym and run on a treadmill, do things like that. But jiu-jitsu, MMA world, the bond is crazy. It's like I can go like to another country and see somebody I haven't seen in 6-7 years. And it's like, we never missed a beat. Like we're still friends, we have jiu-jitsu in common. So it's like, just bam, right to it. It's so hard to explain to people if they haven't done it. It's a super tight community. So like going through the recession, things like that, it really helped because I had a place, to vent, to blow off all your steam. Cause it's, people, that's one of the big problems in America right now is people just sit around the house all day long and then they get anxiety, depression, they're stressed out, they're going to have a heart attack. It's like, man, I have a bad day or anything like that. I go to jiu-jitsu, people are trying to choke me, armbar me. And it's like, oh my God, it's like you lose track of everything. And it's like, it goes back to, caveman days almost of just like, you just feel so much better. It's like, boof, you just get rid of all the stress. Everything's just gone because your body just deals with it and you just feel amazing. And it's like, oh, okay, cool. That wasn't such a big deal. Or a lot of people don't have an outlet, and that's why we have such a big problem with guys, in their mid 40s having these humongous breakdowns.
Absolutely. So your why was to help other people get off the couch and kind of just inspire people to do more with their lives than, or how to deal with anxiety and depression and just be the best version.
Oh yes. Yeah. And for me, it was the outlet I needed. It's like, I wanted to be a good dad. I wanted to be a good role model. I didn't want to be this, humongously overweight person telling my kids they need to be healthy. And it's like, you're a horrible role model. It's like, so I was like, cause I used to be a heavier set person. So I was like, for me, it's always been a battle with my weight. And a lot of times it's self-inflicted, eat too much, eat bad. So I was like, man, I gotta be a better role model, so that was a big part of my why too, was just improving my life and helping other people in my community. And it's been super rewarding. Like, I love it. Like, I can't imagine not doing it.
That's great. So what happened after that? 2007, you got through that, the hardships, and then what happened right after?
Man, it was great. 2009, we had the best run from 2009 to, 2020. It was awesome. Like, I used to joke around, like, running a gym was like the best job on the world. It really wasn't a job. Once you learn, because once you do things the right way and it's systematize everything, it's almost like you can literally follow Tim Ferriss's 4-hour work week. There was at one point in my gym, I don't know if I was working 4 hours a week at the peak. I had all my systems dialed in. I had all my staff. It wasn't working very much. I was traveling all over the world doing consulting, and I come home, my gym was still the same. I'm like, oh my God, this is the greatest thing ever. And then of course, 2020 comes around. It's like, hey, we're going to shut you down and you're going to lose half of your business. So I had to rebuild it and look at how I do my systems again. But I feel like, it's like 2001 and 2008. It's like, we're going to get through this, it's already seeing the change, but it sucked because they literally took, a decade's worth of work and crushed it in 2 months. It was just like, oh my God, they're trying to put us out of business. And you look back at it and it's like, yeah, I could have made better decisions, things like that. But it's like, to me, it's like, okay, I survived this one. I've survived. This is my third, crazy thing in the economy. I'm sure a recession will happen, in the next few years. We'll have to deal with that. But if you survive the tough times, then you just geared up to enjoy the better times so much more. And you appreciate it more too. It's more about the journey at that point.
That's great. So you went through 2 major recessions, 2001, 2008, and then I guess 2020. So how did you navigate that being a gym ownership or gym owner?
2020 was worse for me personally than 2001 and 2008 combined. It was insane. It was like, I thought 2001 was bad. I'm like, oh, cool. I just got licensed. I'm getting fired because the stock market's going to zero, because after 9/11, the sell-off was massive. 2008, I'm like, oh, we're going to lose everything. And then literally 2020 was the first time I thought like, oh my God, you could really lose everything. They can take everything away from us. It's like they shut us down. Some states were arresting people just for trying to run their businesses, and it's like surviving that was the toughest. I mean, because we took, and the funny part was, I had a successful gym and then a successful consulting company for gyms. So you shut down gyms, there's nobody to consult for because their gyms are closed. You're trying to help them save money. So, we took over a 50% hit in both companies, within, less than a year. I mean, it was insane. So now you're trying to rebuild, back, and it's going to take, it'll take a year or two to get back to where we were 2 years ago, which sucks. But to me, it's still great because the journey is awesome. Like I train every day with my students. I have a lot of fun, try to stay in shape. I'm 46. So it's like, I want to just, I want to live to be, 110. So I got to stay in shape.
Love it. So let's get a little bit more personal on the financials part, if you're okay talking about that.
Oh yeah, for sure.
That's great. So during the 2020, how did you finance your lifestyle, or how do you keep everything operational knowing you're getting no revenue?
Yeah, it was tough. It was, luckily, a lot of being honest with people. The first thing is I talked to my wife and she was freaked out. And I was like, she's like, oh, hey, we're good. I said, we've been investing since 2001. I said, literally, we could not make $1 for 2 years and we're going to be fine. I mean, I'm going to be pissed off because I don't want to go into my investments and sell them to stay alive, but I said, if we have to, we can sit on the sidelines for 2 years. We're good. But I don't want to do that. So then it was like looking at, okay, I have, this is the emergency plan. Don't break the glass. Don't get into your investments. But then you're like, okay, I have an emergency fund. And then like with my clients, I just tell them, you need when you first have a business, you got to get a business line of credit. It's one of the first things you need to do, because that was a huge lifesaver for me. It was like, I looked at them like, okay, I got my investments. I got this. They're going to shut us down. We got this amount of time. People are, half people are going to quit the gym, half aren't. But I've got a line of credit that buys me 6 months of time for I'd have to go into my investments. And then it's on the business. It's not on me. Obviously, talk to a CPA and a lawyer about that. But, it was under the business. So it's like, I'm a huge fan of that, of like having a business line of credit, being prepared, just doing the things that any, publicly traded company would do. If you think about all the big companies in the world, like look at like Apple, and they have billions of dollars in cash and they still take out loans because they don't want to spend the cash, and they can write off the interest. It's insane. A lot of people are like, oh, I don't want a line of credit. It's like my annual fee is like $100 a year. But when 2020 hit and I was like, okay, cool. I've got, 6 months of cash flow just sitting here that I can tap into right now. And so that was like a huge sigh of relief, because then it was like when things kind of settled down and the initial wave hit and people quit and people wanted to train, then I had to make adjustments like, hey, you know what, we're going to be running at, 50% capacity. So we're going to drop all of our size of our classes. I didn't fire any instructors. I'm like, hey, but we're going to have to cut down the number of classes you're doing because we just don't have them. And obviously we didn't travel. So all my travel expense money and stuff like that I'd put away, that all funneled into operational expenses. Cause I was like, we're not traveling for 2 years. So it's like, so we made a lot of good, big shifts, but I was prepared for it, cause like, after you went through 2001, 2008, like I gave it one of our marketing conferences. It was in 2018. I was like talking about the upcoming recession and how something bad's going to happen, because at that point we had 9 good years in a row. And I'm like, this is not normal to go a decade where everything's great. And the thing was like, our marketing was like, no, it's great. Nothing's going to go bad. I'm like, things always go bad. It's just cycles. You can't stop them. They happen. And so I was always, I didn't expect, the pandemic to hit. I expected like a recession or something. So I was kind of like, oh my God, what is this? So it was definitely interesting times. But yeah, being prepared. You got to be prepared. You got to understand your finances. You got to know, have to, have your bookkeeper or whatever, having your P&Ls, looking at it, going to your banker and being like, hey, here's my P&Ls. How big of a line of credit can I get? And when you don't need the money, they'll give it to you. That was the funniest part. But I had people that were trying to get loans in 2020, and it was a nightmare because the banks were like, oh, we need to verify this and this and this, and all your revenue went down. So now you got to show us positive revenue. And it's like, well, how am I'm closed. It's like, so I told people, it's like, man, plan ahead. So if, you're listening to this and you're like, oh, I should have done all those things. Well, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago or now. Just do it going forward. Like, have it ready for the next thing. Have your business ready where it's like, hey, if something goes wrong, I do have a business line of credit. I do have a business credit card. I do have options. Give yourself options that you can work with.
That's amazing. So because of your proactive planning, getting the line of credit established, you're able to survive the pandemic, and you came out, and of course you got some scratches, but seems like you're doing fine.
Yeah, lots of scratches, but we're doing good.
That's great. So what other, that was such a great piece of advice about the business line of credit. What other advices do you have for people who are starting out businesses that you think, from a financial aspect, that they should have in place before things get bad?
Man, so yeah, like I said, you got to have good cash flow, line of credit, systems. I hate budgets, but you still need to know what goes in and out. So I like P&Ls better than budgeting, because budgeting is just depressing sometimes. But like the biggest thing is, like, even if people are like, oh, I can't afford a full-time accountant or a book, get a bookkeeper. You can find them for, 100, $200 for a month that just do QuickBooks stuff. But having real P&Ls that you can understand is such a game changer. Cause I'll bring on clients and I'm like, okay, let's go over your P&Ls. And they're like, I don't have that. I'm like, okay, do you know how much comes in and out? They always know how much comes in. Oh yeah, we do like 13,000 a month. I'm like, well, what goes out? And they're like, I don't know. So good P&Ls is huge. And that's one of the biggest things I tell people is is always like, I joke around with our gym owners. I'm like, man, you treat your gym like a publicly traded company. That's one of the things I learned as being a stockbroker is like, man, companies are accountable for their numbers every quarter. So why shouldn't we be accountable for our numbers every quarter? Yeah, the shareholders are our family, our wives and our children. And it's like who we report to. It's like, hey, things are good. We're going to do this quarter. Oh, things weren't very good. We got to fix this and this if we want to go on this Disney trip, So it's like, planning ahead, but seeing the numbers and being honest with yourself. It's huge because a lot of people, they just want to look at it's like gamblers. They only want to count their wins. They don't want to count their losses.
Oh yeah, that's definitely it. People like bragging about their wins, but don't talk about their losses. Yeah, it never happened, right?
Yeah.
How do you allocate your profits? Like, how much do you personally keep, Paul, and how much do you reinvest back into your business? And what's a good rule of thumb that you think other business owners should follow?
And this is one that it gets heated sometimes when I talk to people about this one. And I learned this the hard way. From watching some friends back in, the internet bubble days, they were reinvesting all their money back in their businesses, open up all these extra locations, doing this, doing that. And then 2008 hit, and then they lost everything. They had nothing to show for it. So I tell people, like, I love the book Profits First. And then there's a couple other books that are really good, where it talks about the basics of, profitability, things like that. And honestly, what I tell people is when I set stuff up for my gym, me personally, and other people, is like, okay, you have your gym, you're doing this, you're having money go from your business check into your business savings. Then every quarter, I tell my people what I do is I take half of the profits every quarter and I pull it out of the business completely. Like, it's gone, but I don't spend it. It's not to be spent. It's to invest. So that money goes into either an IRA, a health savings account, a brokerage account. And then once you can start acquiring real assets, and that's when it gets to be really fun, is once you start building these investment accounts, then other things happen where it's like, oh, hey, we got this, investment syndicate and we're going to go open up these shops or whatever, or we're going to do this real estate deal. And I've been fortunate enough where a lot of my friends aren't in that position because they put all their money in their business. And then, you get in this group and a network of people and they're like, hey, we're going to do this real estate deal. And the other guy's like, oh man, I want to do it, but I don't have any cash. And I'm like, all right, cool. I'll just sell some Amazon and then, get in on this deal, because I want to be, one thing I learned, is you have the markets, you have the business. But for me now at my age at 46, I'm thinking a lot more about building assets that create passive income. And I want to be like the silent investor in things where it's like, I have no say, no stress, and I just get my quarterly checks. So it's but so I tell people, if you don't start learning how to invest and pulling money out of your business, then you'll never be able to get to that point. And you'll never be able to take advantage of these opportunities that are huge. And you don't usually see them. And, in your 20s and 30s, you don't see these things because you're just on the grind, you're building, and that's totally understandable. When you hit your 40s, it's like, man, you want to have disposable assets where it's like, okay, cool. So yeah, so I've been able, like in the last 2 years, to get on some really cool deals that I wouldn't have been able to get in on if I hadn't been planning ahead for the last, 15 to 20 years.
That's great. So you're basically saying you take half the profit from your business and you don't spend it. You take it and you actually invest it somewhere else. And you talked about HSA, your Roth IRAs, or your IRAs and taxable accounts. Are they just in index funds, or what specifically do you invest in?
Man, that's always the funny one. I always go back. I always default to the Warren Buffett answer of like, nobody can, or most managers can't beat the S&P 500. It's the undisputed champion of the last 100 years. So a lot of times, just my investment strategy is like for long-term IRAs and health savings is just index funds, super low risk. Like I don't want to deal with like the stress of it going up and down. But then in my non-retirement brokerage account, then I do some dumb stuff, which I'll say dumb, but it's like, I'll take money out and I'll buy some crypto. I'll buy some, some more Amazon or things that I use and believe in. But it's like, I got really good advice from my super rich friends one time. We were talking about, I was like, oh, I want to do gas futures. And he looked at me, he's like, okay, you know how risky that is? I'm like, yeah, but you can make so much money. He's like, all right, here's this piece of advice. And it stuck with me forever. And I tell people this one all the time. He's like, if you want to invest in something risky, that's great. Do it. You might hit a home run, but take the same amount of money you're willing to take into your backyard and set on fire. That's your comfort zone. So if it's $1,000, it's $1,000. If it's 20 grand, it's 20 grand. It depends on the person and their thing. But if it's going to be speculative, and we've seen it in crypto, every time the crypto run happens, you can almost call the top. It's like when the people that don't know what they're doing are like, hey, I should get into Bitcoin. It's like, oh God, I should sell. And that's what happened. Like literally we were joking around. We have this friend who like, whenever we talk about investments, he's in the martial arts world too. Is like he has a gym, and when we talk about investments, he just rolls his eyes like, "Oh, this is stupid," blah blah blah. And then Bitcoin was at like 60 something thousand, and we were making stupid money in Ethereum and everything. And then that guy posted on Facebook, he's like, "Oh man, what's the best way to buy Bitcoin?" And we all joked around like, "We should really sell right now." And literally 3 days later, it's tanked 50%. And I was like, it was right there, because when the masses are trying to, so now it's like I keep waiting for the tweets and texts of like, oh man, I'll never do crypto again. Crypto sucks. I lost 60% of my money, because that's when the buys are that's when the market's going to go up, because we're always wrong. It's like we're supposed to buy low, sell high, but as Americans, especially, we buy high and sell low all the time. People are like, they buy the hype and then they sell the and it's like, no, it's backwards. You got to do it backwards. But it's hard to get them to understand.
No, that's so funny. For those of you who are just listening and can't see my face, I was laughing the whole time, because this is exactly verbatim what happened with some people I follow on Facebook and Instagram as well. They're like, hey, should I buy this stock? And then literally 2 days later, completely tanks. So yeah, this is exactly what happens.
And that's the hardest thing, is tell people to take the long road. It's like, I was investing for a long time, and it's like, you don't see big gains in year 5, 10, 15, 20. It's year 30 and 40. Like, if you look at the charts, anybody that looks at like any of the data charts, you put in like, hey, if I put $500 away for the next 40 years, it just does this. It does this. And then, 30 to 40 years later, it's just going. And the thing is, we need more time, and we don't have it. So it's like starting earlier is the best thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's back up a little bit to the passive income talk. So you talked about your traditional investments in your IRA, HSA, your taxable brokerage. What type of investments do you invest in to generate passive income?
Man, this has been like my passion project now. So I'm like, my wife jokes with me, because I'm like, I gotta find more money. I gotta go sell something, or do something to make more disposable cash, because I'm starting to run into more. It's funny because it's like that. Like the things you think of, like the reticular activation system. You ever read Chet Holmes' book, The Ultimate Sales Machine?
I haven't. No, tell me about that one.
Yeah, it's a great book. He talks about in there, like the reticular activating system, like our subconscious, like if you plant things in there, it goes looking for it. So it's like, the example is like, you buy a Honda Accord, and you haven't seen any, and you buy a Honda Accord, and then all you see is Honda Accords. Or you buy your first BMW, you're like, oh, nobody's got a BMW in this neighborhood, and you buy it, and then all you see is BMWs, because your subconscious is kind of look at those things. So it's kind of weird. It's like, I started doing this and getting involved with people that were doing different deals. And I was like, hey, I'm interested in doing this, this, and this. And then like you find a deal, and then another deal happens. And like, now I'm finding more deals than I have money for. And I'm like, well, what do I do? It's like, it's just stressful. And I'm trying not to be stressful about it. So to give you an example, what I've been doing is like looking at ways like, okay, I'm 46. By the time I'm 50, I want to create X amount of passive income. I want to have, and what I mean by passive, people are like, oh, you can't have passive income. I'm talking like, the work you do is wiring the money out and then receiving the quarterly distributions. That's the level of work I want to do for these things. People are like, well, you have no say. And yeah, that's great, because I've run businesses. It's like, so what I do is I look for different companies where it's like they're looking to raise capital and they have a solid track record. Like we're doing the syndicate I'm in, we're doing 10 coffee and donut shops this year. The first one's about to open. And then by then you did about 10 of those. And so I'm like a passive, a private equity, but silent. Like literally at the meeting, they were like, don't tell us anything. Don't ask us any questions. Don't tell us how to run our business. He goes, you do that, we will send you your money back because you're annoying. I understand why, because these guys are moving. They're dealing with a lot of stress, a lot of money, and they don't want to listen to, 50 guys like, well, maybe you should change this. And it's like, no, just let them do their thing. So I started doing that, and then then I was like, okay, I got to get into some real estate stuff, but I don't want to be a landlord, things like that. And then got into some Airbnb deals, which are hopefully finishing up pretty soon. So yeah, it's been pretty cool. There's so much opportunity out there, and we're seeing a crazy time where, and this one's going to sound funny for passive income, but I will plug this one since I did it and it was good and now it's bad. But going into NFTs, I bought an NFT project where it was basically this bear, and then it was like you paid X for the bear, and I got lucky. It was the first NFT I ever bought. I got lucky. It went from like 1 Ethereum to like 4 in like 2 weeks. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm rich. And then of course it went back down to 1. But a lot of these projects go up and down and tank, but this one actually had built into it. It generates honey every day, and it generates its own coin. So when crypto was doing good, 6 months ago, my bear was making $30 a day. And I was joking with my son. I'm like, my bear makes more money than you. He's, senior in high school. I'm like, my favorite son because it was generating crypto. And it was like, okay, cool. Then of course you go to the sell off now. My bear makes like $2 a day, but I laugh about it. It's still $2 a day. I don't do anything for it. And he's literally makes, $60 a month, and it's like, it's just crazy the opportunities we're going to see. One of my friends, and this one just blows my mind because there's different levels to the games always. So one of my friends went in and bought like, it wasn't a Bored Ape. It was like a mutant ape yacht thingy, whatever. They're like, I think he paid like 30 or 40 grand and bought 3 of them, which is just insane. And people are like, oh, this is crazy. But then people that are following it, they just dropped their own ape coin because one company owns both of them now. They dropped a coin. Dude, he got $100,000 in crypto just for owning those things. He's like, so he's actually already profitable. And then they do other things too. So for me, I dabble in NFTs, but the NFTs, I only put enough money in there where it's, I'm not going to be like, oh, hey, honey, we lost our house or like that. But I want to learn. So I bought NFTs and I got lucky on the first one. Then I'd probably say the next 8 that I bought all tanked and I lost everything on them because they were just garbage projects. But I'm learning about it. I follow Gary Vee, learning about the utility, following how he does his thing with VFriends. And there's going to be a crazy thing. There's people right now, and I haven't done it yet, passive income. There's people buying land in the metaverse and renting it. I'm like, I want to do that, but I'm not there yet. So right now it's just hard assets that we can invest in, and create passive income for, my family. And then the coolest part about it though, is you get into these private equity deals and through these syndicates, and it's like, you get X amount of return a year. So maybe you are getting a decent amount of passive income, but then you always forget there's going to be hopefully an exit where they sell the whole thing, and you're going to get, 2, 3, 4, 5 times what you put into the project, which is cool. So it's exciting to see all these things popping up that we didn't have access, that didn't even exist 10 years ago.
Yeah. Let's back up to that crypto talk. I mean, it's something I invest in a little bit myself. I'm not an expert by any means, but how did you get into, I guess, NFTs specifically? And would you consider yourself an expert or just getting started or somewhere in the middle?
I would say, let's see, crypto first. I did, I got into crypto 4 years ago and I just put a little bit of money into it and then it went up and went down. And I'm like, forgot about it. My whole plan was a dollar cost average into Bitcoin. I never did it because I was dumb. Now I'm like, I dollar cost average every week into Bitcoin and Ethereum because I'm like, I don't know when it's going up or down, but if I just buy it every week, I'm going to win. So I just dollar cost average into those. And then I'm a huge Gary Vee fan. And when he started talking about NFTs, I'm like, okay, this is going to be something big. And then you start hearing him talk about, other people talk about it, how it's going to be bigger than Web 1.0, Web 2.0. It's going to be the biggest thing. And he gets into it. So I would say I'm probably in the middle ground. Like I understand, like that first time you buy your first NFT is an absolute nightmare because you're just like, I had to send what to where and do what. And then I got to mint and how do I do this? And I got to pay for gas. And it's like, you think, regular gas is high. Ethereum gas is insane. It's getting better sometimes, but depending on the project, it can cost you, a good chunk of change just to mint an NFT. So some people, they'll wait and just buy it on the secondary market. So I would say I'm probably in the middle ground, like knowledgeable wise. I've actually slowed down because I was becoming a hyper buyer and I was getting caught up in momentum. And it's the same thing with the stock market. If there's a bunch of hype behind something, don't buy it because you're going to get burned. Every time I get burned is something with a bunch of, oh, this is going to be the next blah, 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 blah. And the thing has no utility, no anything. And you just bought it because you're trying to, and if you buy it, you got to be ready to get out quick. And if you're not, you're going to get killed. So like Gary Vee stuff, you follow him, he's building, his VFriends are insane. Like I had a couple friends, 10, 20x their investment. And I'm just like, oh my God, I'm an idiot. I didn't do it back then because I bought some coins instead. So now I'm waiting for VFriends 2 to come out and then buy some of those because he's playing the long game. Like he's talking about, where his VFriends are going to be at in 2030, 2035. Everybody else is just like trying to pump and dump stuff. So, it's very interesting to learn and follow what he's doing. I mean, he's literally created an entire separate company that does it.
Could you talk more about VFriends? What is it, just for those of us, including me, who don't know what it is?
Yeah, do you follow Gary Vee at all?
I do, but I'm not as into the crypto area as I should be.
So, and Gary Vee, he jokes around like he repels half the people because he's so just loud and just going all the time. Some people are like, I can't take a large doses of him, but I met him. It was probably 9 years ago at Infusion Con. It was like I got to actually like talk to him, and it was like before he was super famous. So now I'm like, yeah, I just follow everything the guy does. But VFriends was cool. He created a project where, and he was one of the first ones to do something really cool at this. So he created this project where he hand doodled these things, and they were ugly and whatever. He sold them everything, but he put utility into them. So what I mean by utility is in the smart contract on the blockchain. If you have the NFT, then you can go to his VCon conference for the next 3 years. And no one in the world can go to this conference unless you have it on your phone and show them the NFT and you got to scan it, and it reads it. And then that's your ticket in. So he created like this exclusivity thing to it. And then he had like high level ones where like if you bought certain VFriends, you got a 10-minute Zoom once a month with him or like a group Zoom. So he built all these crazy things in there. So then people have resale where they're like, well, you know what? I did this for a year or two and I sell it. And this is the genius part. And this is where we're going to see a lot of this come into play for business owners and things like that is in his smart contract, he gets a 10% commission anytime a VFriend is sold to someone else. And he does nothing. It's all done on the blockchain. So say I have a VFriend and you're like, hey, Paul, I want to buy your VFriend bear or whatever. I'm like, all right, cool. It's 2 ETH, 5 ETH, whatever. So I send that to you on the blockchain. You send the 5 ETH. And then they literally 10% just automatically goes to Gary Vee's wallet every transaction. I forget how much he's made, but I want to say he made like, it was something insane. It was like $90 million when he did VFriends, but supposedly the resale commissions now have almost surpassed the actual original sales because the VFriends all go up in value. He's getting 10% every time someone flips one. It's nuts. And he does literally say he just wakes up and there's a couple $100,000 in his wallet and he's like, oh, cool. Somebody sold some VFriends. And it's just so many options. You think about like sports teams are going to be able to do stuff like that. Like I'm in Dallas, Mark Cuban wants to make all the Mavs tickets NFTs, so it's going to be crazy. Like we're like at the cutting edge. I mean, I wouldn't say we're like in the first quarter, the 4-quarter game because everybody's still trying to figure it out and what's going on. And it's just wild.
Yeah, no, this is super interesting. Last night I was at an event and I met some people who literally they're working on their own NFT projects and they do consulting for businesses and they're sharing something very similar to what you're saying, how it's an entrance or it can be used as an entrance to different events or exclusivity clubs. And that's what it looks like VFriends is.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, there's so many crazy ones. They got a new one that Gary Vee partnered with some other guys on. I forget what it's called, something Fly Fisherman's Club, whatever. And it's access to this like ultra elite sushi bar in New York. I'm like, okay, that's interesting. I mean, it's expensive too. It's like 10 grand an NFT.
So for, let's say, service-based businesses, can you use NFTs for a service-based business and how would that look like to make a business more profitable?
I think you will be able to. What I've told people, because everybody's like, oh man, let's do it now. Let's do an NFT launch and, make some money. I'm like, well, yeah, you could probably do that right now as a service-based business. But if you don't understand the utility, you don't have something that's resellable, then you're going to have a bunch of people buy something for, money, and then it's going to drop 90%. And then there's your reputation of like, hey, you're the guy that sold that crappy project. So I think this is one of those things where you got to be patient a little bit. Like I want to do it for certain things, but I'm like, man, if I do this, is it going to, do I have, something here? These people are going to be, it's going to be valuable in a couple of years. I think we're going to see a huge shift because right now NFTs are too complicated for the average person. It's just too much work. Like the first NFT I bought was a freaking nightmare. Like it was super complicated. You put money in this account, forward it to this wallet, then you got to convert it, then bring it over to this wallet. Then but I think the real game changer we're going to see is like when Coinbase launches their NFT market, that's going to just change everything because anybody that's buying crypto that's pretty new to the game is probably buying it on Coinbase. That's where I buy mine. Obviously no recommendation, but it's super easy. You go on your phone and you just go like, okay, I want Ethereum, and you get Ethereum. And it's like, okay, I want to buy Ethereum every week, and it buys it every week. We're like, if you got to deal with MetaMask to OpenSea to back and forth, I think when Coinbase gets it, and you can have things like that where it's like super, super easy. Because that's where we're going to see adoption by small businesses. Because right now it'd be hard. You'd have to have people like there's people in our industry that like take membership sales in Ethereum stuff like that. People pay for like a year or whatever. But you're dealing with somebody that's pretty technically savvy. Like 99% of my students couldn't send me Ethereum right now if I asked them to. They'd be like, how do I do that? So Coinbase is going to change the game because when they launch their NFT market, and you can do it all right there. And then as a local business, you could do so many things with it. I mean, it's crazy. Like, give you an example, like for an AC company, because somebody was talking about this one time. It was like, can you imagine you buy an AC unit and it costs whatever. And it's like, well, do you want the gold service NFT? And okay, it costs, the NFT costs $500 and you get all these cool things for life, blah, blah, blah. And the best part about it is if you move, whatever, you can sell the NFT on the open market for whatever it's worth. So it's like, you're going to see things where people are going to have that opportunity where we couldn't do it in the past. It's like if you ever bought something in a city and you move to another city, like say maybe you have a gym membership and you paid for X amount of years, but you move, it's really hard to be like, hey, can I get those other 2 years that I paid for? It's like, well, no, you're moving. And it's like, oh, but if you had an NFT version of it, you could just resell it. And so we're going to see things like that. And then for the small business owner, you have, you sell the NFT, then you get the resale commissions and then just little things like that. It's going to be cool. It's going to be really exciting.
That's really exciting. Gosh, sorry, I lost my train of thought. I was just lost in what you're saying.
It's so crazy. Oh, we talk about it like when I get with my friends that are into that stuff, like you can talk about it for days. Like it doesn't stop. Like there's so much. It's like you're creating a whole other world.
Absolutely. So for those who want to get involved in investing in NFTs, and I guess people like getting told what to do rather than actually spending time learning it, what's a good place for people to at least start exploring before they dive into the crypto space?
Yeah, man, the best thing, and I keep going back to Gary Vee, but follow his V Friends Instagram or Facebook page. They literally are educating they're like, he's so smart about the way he's doing everything. He's already figured it out. He's got teams, and also they're literally doing tutorials weekly, like, because they know if they teach their fans how to buy NFTs, when he does his next drop, he's going to have way more sales. So they're giving out some of the best training for free. They're like, here's how you set up a MetaMask. This is how you set up an OpenSea account. This is how you avoid getting scammed. Don't open any airdrops, things like that. They're educating the community at a crazy level. And it's going to create him more money, because he's exposing people to VFriends, and they're like, oh, when the next VFriends comes out, I want to get on that because that one didn't go down during the sell-off. So yeah, if you follow that one on Instagram and Facebook, they give away just tons of free trainings. It's really cool.
That's amazing. Let's switch the conversation back to, I guess, traditional assets, because crypto's still very new and a lot of our audience probably isn't as involved. In your opinion, what is your secret to building wealth? And also, I saw that you believe every single person can become a millionaire. Why is that, and how can they do it?
100%. The problem is I talk to people like anybody in the world can become a millionaire. It's just time and consistency. You look at any financial chart, it's there. It's like $400 a month for the next 30 years at 10% interest in the S&P 500 is going to give you $1 million. Are you going to do it and stick with it? A lot of people aren't going to do it. They're not going to stick with it. They're going to put $5,000 into GameStop, and then it goes up to 10,000 and down to 2,000, and the market's rigged and they quit. So you have to have a long-term plan. So I tell people, it's like, set up your retirement, do all that stuff, set up the most boring investments, index funds, boring stuff, and put money in every month, and you'll be set no matter what the market does. I mean, we've all seen the charts like this. It's but at the end of the 30 years, it's just up. So staying consistent and doing that is the biggest thing. And boring investments, it's like, it's fun to speculate. Like I'll buy some stocks, like here and there and dabble, but it's always in a different account. But my retirement account is just boring indexes, because every time I've chased a trend or a fad, I lose. It's like, I was a trader. I was like, oh, I'm smart, I'm going to do everything. It's like, I always joke around. My wife still reminds me of this one. When the iPhone 1 came out, I bought a bunch of Apple stock, made like 20%, made like $2,000, and I sold it. If I would have held on to it from iPhone 1 to now, it'd be worth like $800,000. And it's like, but I was smart, I made 20%. I, cashed out because we sell too early. So if you just keep investing, don't worry about it, and just let the time work. That's the hardest part, is like, if somebody starts doing it, you put $400 away, $400 a month away for the next 10 years, you're not going to see that much. I mean, you're going to see, 50, 70, probably like $70,000, $80,000, if you're putting that money away, and you're like, man, I've been doing this for 10 years. Now I have 80,000, but then in 20 years, then you got 200, then it's, 500, then it's 1.2 million, but it's not till the end. So you have to play a long game and just be willing to invest consistently. And then it's just, like Einstein said, it's compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. It's like, just let it work, just leave it alone. It's like, I think Fidelity did a study, and it's the craziest one. They went through and they audited like all the accounts at their company, and the best performing accounts were one of two things: the person was dead, or they forgot about their account and it was like a lost property account because no one had touched it in years, and it was insane. So like just leave it alone.
That's so funny. While you're talking about this, that was the first study that came to my mind. I'm like, oh my gosh, I hope he talks about it. And you did.
Yeah, it's crazy when you hear that, because I was like, oh, I'm an active trader, I'm this, I'm that. Well, the dead people are beating you in the markets right now.
So you said you have a kid, right?
I have two.
Son? You have two?
Yep. Yeah, son and daughter, 19 and 17.
Okay. How do you teach them about money, or what are some practical advice that you have for parents who have kids, or to the younger crowd listening to this?
Man, you can give your kids such an unfair advantage. And I bring this up because I came from like a lower middle class, maybe middle class family in the Midwest, where every day it was, no, we don't have money like that. Money doesn't grow on trees. We can't afford that. Rich people suck. So like my whole life, I grew up with all these limiting beliefs and negative things. And then when I got to Texas and I got around some in jiu-jitsu, jiu-jitsu is a crazy melting pot. Like joke around, like I'll be teaching class and there'll be a tattoo artist, a bartender, a surgeon, a DEA agent, and I'm just like, this is the craziest place on earth. Like these guys would never hang out outside of here, So it's like, I got exposed to a lot of people and I started getting exposed to rich people that had money and like, I'd get to hang out with them, whatever. And then I had a couple of friends I got really close to and I go over their house and stuff. And I hear the way they talk to their kids and I'm like, wait a second. Well, you support what? Money's good, and you should do. What did you do to make more money? And what are you investing in? And I'm like, is what you guys talk about at dinner? I'm like, oh my god. So I learned. I was like, man, when I have kids, I'm gonna just ruin them financially. They're gonna be the smartest financial kids. So like my son, like we joke around, like at our house during the day, only thing on TV is CNBC. Like I don't watch the news, don't watch anything. So my family, my wife, my son, they all know everything about CNBC. It's all we watch. I taught my son how to invest when he was younger. And then the funniest thing, it was like a cool parent moment, was he came downstairs and one day, he just turned his birthday morning. And I was getting ready for work. And he's like, Dad, guess what I did last night? I'm like, what? He's like, at 12:02, I opened a Robinhood account. I'm like, oh, great. That's awesome, dude. Super proud of you. So it's like things start, but for the thing you can do to help if you have kids is just teach them about money. It's not evil. It's not horrible thing. Yeah, it can, if it's a bad person, it can amplify how bad you are, but really money solves problems. And rich people, they give their kids an unfair advantage because they teach them about money. Where like middle class and lower middle class, they teach their kids how bad money is and all, and like you don't see these opportunities. And I'm like, man, said I lost like 10 or 12 years of my adult time because I had that crappy mindset, oh, this sucks. I'll never get and then I started getting around people with money and seeing how they acted and how they talked about things. And it's like, man, this is a whole different world.
No, like exactly like I said, money's just a tool. It can amplify it gives you opportunities to do whatever you want with it, whether it is to help other people, grow yourself, grow the community, or use it for negative purposes. So it just gives you the opportunity to do whatever. How did you, you're married. How did you and your spouse get on the same page financially?
Man, that's another one. I got all kinds of these little gold pieces. So this is when I give all my friends advice, because luckily, knock on wood, I've been married for 23 years. I don't know how, it's like we've been lucky. But one thing I credit it to is from day one, we always talked about money. Like we were broke when we got married. We were just broke as hell. Before I was a stockbroker, I was managing GNCs, and it was like I was making, and she was working a part-time job or not part-time job, but like a regular job, making no money. We had nothing when we got married. So it's kind of a funny story. Then as things evolved and we got better. Now it's like we go to dinner and like at least once a week we talk, okay, this is, what I'm thinking. This is where our money's at. This is where our account's at. I'm going to do this and this deal, but this will affect this. What do you think about this? And I bring her into every decision. Sometimes she's like, well, I don't understand this. I'm like, well, I need, your advice and see what you think. Cause I'm thinking about doing this. Sometimes she's like, oh, it's a good idea. Or sometimes she'll be like, that's a really bad idea. I'm like, all right, cool. Let's do that. So like when we started getting into like the donut shop and stuff like that, she got so excited. She's like, oh, that's really cool. I understand that. And it's like, yeah, so it's great. So it's kind of like Shark Tank where you put money into somebody's thing and then you don't do that much with it. And it's stuff like that. But we've always been really good at communicating. And it's like, okay, if this happens this way, and it helps when the times go bad because I'll make mistakes or the market corrects or, if you have a sizable portfolio, like right now and the market's down, 20, depending on what your stocks you have, 20 to 50%, some of those conversations are ugly. You're like, hey, remember when we had this much money? Well, now we have this much, but we haven't sold it yet. So technically we're okay. But so we communicate a lot and we make jokes about it. It's like, okay, we're just going to hang on, a couple of years. I don't think Netflix is going anywhere. It's, it's had a huge sell off, but do you keep it? Do you get rid of it? So just communication, because a lot of people they hide stuff from their spouse, then they get stressed out about money, and then the spouse gets mad. They're not talking to them about money. So we've always been very, very, cut and dry. But the big thing is having, like I call them money dates, where it's like you want to date and then just talk about money. Like, hey, this is where we're at. This is what I want to do. What do you want to do? Oh, I want to do this. Okay, cool. Let's see if this works out and this works out. And so that's one of my biggest pieces of advice.
Start having money dates and just being
money date finances. Yeah, just open up the book, because then it's like, what's that saying? It's like, the stuff you hide is the stuff that's going to bite you in the, it's like, but if you're up front and be like, hey, I did this, we did this, we're looking at this, oh, okay, cool. It takes a lot of the stress away. That's what when 2020 happened, it was a rough date, but I'm like, okay, we're going to be fine. We got this and this, we're going to be good. It could get ugly, but we're okay.
Yeah, absolutely. What are some of your favorite books that you would recommend for people getting started in finance or entrepreneurship that you think could definitely benefit them?
Man, the one on Warren Buffett, I can't remember if it's an autobiography or biography, anything about Warren Buffett read it. I mean, the guy's amazing. Buffett's kind of the king. Everybody made fun of him in 2000, and even recently they're making fun of him, because he invests in what he understands. He's like, well, I don't get Bitcoin, so I don't invest in it. That's his choice. But his fund is returning crazy returns because he invests in things he believes in. Anything by Warren Buffett. One book that I really liked, which of all things was kind of crazy, was Money, the Tony Robbins book. It's like, only problem with it's about this freaking thick. But it has really good chapters in there with Ray Dalio and just talking about finance and planning. That book's phenomenal. Get the audiobook if you want. So it's long.
It was like 24 hours or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
Well, Paul, it was a pleasure having you on the show. Where can our audience get in touch with you if they want to hear more about what you do or just contact you?
Thank you. Yeah, the best place, honestly, is I love Instagram. So just go to Instagram /PAUL_HALME. My last name. I spend all my time on Instagram. Really, Facebook is just getting worse and worse, becoming more of a political cesspool. And, it just gets but Instagram, I really enjoy that. And I put a bunch of free content on Instagram. So, and kind of some of the stuff I'm working on. So like in my stories, I'll show behind the scenes, like, oh, we're doing this, we're doing that. So definitely follow me on Instagram. That's my favorite spot, and then if you got any questions, just send me a message on there and I can send you some resources and stuff.
Awesome. I'll link that all up in the show notes. Paul, it was a pleasure having you. And thanks so much for coming on the show.
Man, it was great. I had a great time.